Hello there and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to do something different and we're going to look at some unused classic WoW maps that could be used in Season of Discovery in future phases. I love unused maps. I always find them so fascinating that there's so much work been put into them and then they just go unused. So yeah, there's about 6 or so unused maps and areas in the classic WoW files that we can take a look at in this video. But before we jump into that, guys, I just want to shout out my Twitch, twitch.tv/MrGM. If you want to see me stream World of Warcraft, Dragonflight PTR, Season of Discovery, and more, over on twitch.tv/MrGM every single day. Right, so yes, Season of Discovery is most definitely underway. We are currently in Phase 2 of Season of Discovery, with the level cap being currently level 40, and in the future it will be 50, and then 60, and then who knows what happens. I think they're probably just going to do more content for level 60, and so far people have really enjoyed Season of Discovery, myself included. Phase 1 was super fun going into BFD as a raid, and then obviously in Phase 2 we now have Gnomeregan. However, there are a bunch of unused maps in the classic WoW files that I would love to see as raids or dungeons or just kind of areas that we could go to, because, you know, they are still vanilla WoW zones. They're just ones that were just unused and are literally in the classic era files. So without further ado, let's jump into some of these. So the first one is Scarlet Monastery. Now you're probably thinking, what do you mean? We already have Scarlet Monastery. So this is a map called Unused Monastery, and this is actually all of the Scarlet maps put together. This is one of my favorite unused maps in the vanilla WoW files. So the layout of this map is really interesting. The instance portal is at the bottom of the stairs in the outside area of Scarlet Monastery. This is actually where the start of the dungeon or raid would be. Obviously from there you'd go up the stairs through the area where you'd go into your specific instance, but in this case the doors to Armory and Cathedral are open and they lead to a corridor. They actually lead to the same corridor. So going down this corridor and taking a left will take you to an outside area which resembles the Houndmaster Loxi boss area from Library, the boss with the hounds obviously, and that is just an exact replica of that. From this area you go down a short corridor and then you end up in Herald's room from Armory. You actually end up on the bottom floor of this area, so you'd imagine another boss would be here, and from there you can head up these stairs at the back of the room, which will lead into another corridor. Now from here you end up at a crossroads. You could either go left or you can go right. Going left resembles the first part of the graveyard instance in Scarlet Monastery, and then down another corridor into another kind of outside boss area, kind of similar to the Houndmaster area, but a little bit different here, a little bit more open, and yeah, you'd imagine a boss would just kind of be in the middle of this section. Now if you go back to that crossroads and hit a right, you'll actually go down a corridor that exactly resembles Scarlet Library, and going right out of there will actually take you through a short corridor and then into the Cathedral area. Yeah, an area that exactly resembles the Cathedral, where you'd find Mograine and Whitemane and things like that, and that would be the end of the dungeon or raid. So it's pretty awesome. As mentioned, it is all of the Scarlet Monasteries all amalgamated into one. I'd imagine in development they probably made this and then they were like, you know what, this is way too long for a dungeon, let's split it up into 4 and create, you know, what we have right now. But this would be such a fun raid to have in Season of Discovery. I'd love to see what they could do with it. They could like remaster all of those bosses and just make them super fun and add some new gear in there and whatnot. I think it would be really great as a Scarlet Monastery raid, and I've always wanted it. It's as said, it's been in the game file since vanilla WoW, and it's just a really visually nice area and how it seamlessly goes into all of the Scarlet Monasteries. They did also do a little bit of a Scarlet Monastery tease at BlizzCon, so I don't know if this was referring to that. As of right now, as of the recording of this, we haven't had any sort of Scarlet Monastery changes so far, so not sure what's going on with that. But Scarlet Monastery, or the Unused Monastery map, definitely one of my favorites and definitely something I would love to see in Season of Discovery in the future. The next area is called Stormwind Prison in the game files, also known as the Stormwind Vault. So this is the dungeon attached to the island area in Stormwind that is like kind of fully gated off. And this is kind of a raid version of the Stockades. So this is actually incredible. So much work has gone into this, which is really surprising that it was never used. So the layout of this is essentially 2 floors. There are 2 floors to this Stockades. So as you come into the entrance, you're at a cross section, and going left will kind of take you down an area that exactly resembles the Stockades, and going forward will also take you down a corridor that resembles the stockades. The only difference you'll notice here is there are some grates on the floor, which you can actually see down into the floor below, which we're going to go to in a second. So if you go back to the start of the entrance and go right, this is where it gets a little bit different. So down here, you'll see various prisons, but from there, it goes even lower. You'll have areas like a solitary confinement prison, and obviously your standard prisons that you did see in the stockades. But as you continue down these long corridors, you can look up through the grate that we just saw earlier, and from that area will actually lead into kind of a large boss area that we've never seen in the stockades. So this is like a new area that was designed, presumably for a boss. Now from this area goes into my favorite room, and this is where I would presume would be the last boss of this dungeon or raid. So this is a massive open area with a really tall roof and pillars all around the room, so that you could just imagine what kind of boss fight you could have in here. Maybe a dragon, maybe a demon, maybe something crazy could definitely be confined in this sort of like massive prison of the stockades. And again, this is a design we've never seen before in the stockade. So it's really cool to see all of this work being done, but never used. You know, this is just such an easy win for Blizzard to, you know, spawn this, make a little story out of it. Obviously, the only issue here is like with the Horde, like how did the Horde end up here? How would they get there? But that's something they could figure out. I think this area would just be such an awesome kind of like stockades raid or like mega dungeon, you know, or something like that. So yeah, Stormwind Vault, a very interesting zone that was just never used in Classic WoW. The next area is less of a dungeon or raid and more of like a questing zone or an area that you could just kind of like hang out in. And this is the Emerald Dream. Yeah, that probably sounds familiar because we've been to the Emerald Dream in patch 10.2 of Dragonflight. But yes, there is a vanilla WoW version of the Emerald Dream. There's actually kind of two areas to this zone, and it's super unfinished and very green. So sorry about your retinas on this one. So the first area is the Verdant Fields. Now this is a super unfinished area with like swirly floor patterns and massive colorful plants all spawned around this area. It's an absolutely massive area. You may have seen this in some like old exploration videos and things like that. And this is certainly an area that you can see that they started to design, but obviously didn't eventually continue it. And then, you know, even now in 10.2, some of the swirly floor designs and some of the ideas from this have actually been used in 10.2, which I really like as like kind of a throwback there. The second area is the Emerald Forest. So this is where you're going to find a lot of floating trees. This model was always really cool and never reused as far as I'm aware. There's a couple rivers around this area, as well as a dream catcher, which is awesome. I believe they use the dream catcher further on in Legion. And you'll also find like a big statue of a man. I don't know who this man is, but if you recognize it, you probably would have seen it in 10.2 because they did reuse it in patch 10.2. So two areas to the Emerald Dream, the Emerald Forest and the Verdant Fields. Extremely green, extremely unfinished, but certainly somewhere that they could finish or use in the future. But obviously with 10.2 having the Emerald Dream, perhaps it wouldn't be something they'd want to do. But yeah, it's just another unfinished zone of vanilla WoW. The next area is actually something that the devs actually teased at BlizzCon. So this is the Karazhan Crypts. So this is not a new map ID. This is actually in the outside world, but obviously you could convert it into like a dungeon or raid or just an outside area perhaps. So this is actually outside of Karazhan down in the crypts, and this has been in the game since vanilla WoW. It's like an underground graveyard with various tunnels and areas where you'd have bodies and undead and things like that, but it just goes lower and lower into these like vast areas of like water and stone and various like bone piles and things like that. It's a really incredible area, honestly, and it's so massive that honestly it would really work well as a raid. There's also an underwater grave in this area with some very questionable art assets that are pretty horrific, honestly. But yeah, this is kind of the underwater area of that, which will open up into like a giant area which could potentially house like a final boss of this. There's also a really cool bit at the start that I really like in the Karazhan Crypt. So if you just go slightly left, you just fall down this hole and you end up in another area of the crypts, which is actually really cool. But Karazhan Crypts, certainly an area I would probably expect to be a raid rather than a dungeon, but I guess we'll have to see. As said, it was teased at BlizzCon, so we probably will see it at some point during Season of Discovery. The next area we're going to talk about is not a dungeon or raid. It is actually a battleground, and if you were to categorize it, I would categorize it as an epic battleground, and this is Azshara Crater. So this is a huge unused battleground area that was being developed during vanilla WoW, it seems. Obviously with the name, as you'd imagine, it's designed very similar to Azshara, but it is a unique design in the way that it's laid out. Much like other battlegrounds, you have an alliance base, a horde base, and a battle area in the center. So let's start off by talking about the alliance base. Now it is night elf themed, as you'd imagine, and actually it's really cool here because you have this very narrow gate to enter the night elf base. So obviously you'd imagine some really epic PvP could happen here. Now, as mentioned, this is extremely unfinished, so there's a lot of like texturing and areas that are just not done at all, but all of the buildings have been kind of sprouted in this area, with the barracks being in the middle, having various watchtowers and a cave to the side as well, which is actually really cool. The area around the alliance base and around the map actually really reminds me of like a Warfront. This would actually really work nicely as a Warfront map. It's a shame Warfronts didn't really end up as we expected. Moving over across the map to the horde base now, you have the main barracks on the hill, like the big horde barracks where you'd imagine like the end boss will be or something like that, but the majority of this is Tauran architecture with a few little orc ones here and there. The horde base definitely seems a little bit more unfinished than the alliance here. To get into the base, you have a bridge over a dried river, like a Tauran bridge, and you also have a smaller barracks at the back. Now, it doesn't seem to have a cave similar to the alliance area here, but as mentioned, this area seems a little bit more unfinished than the alliance base. Now, as mentioned, there is a kind of like battle area in the middle, and absolutely the best part of this zone is the centerpiece, and that is the two massive dragon statues. Now, one of them is intact and one of them is destroyed, and this is a design that we did see on the Dragon Isles as well. Now, as far as I'm aware, this has not been used in the game files in vanilla WoW, but yeah, these two dragon statues are absolutely incredible looking, and it's just such a shame that this area was just not used at all. This would be such a fun way to add something new to Season of Discovery, but still having that vanilla WoW art style and feel as this was designed in original vanilla WoW. And they could just kind of finish off the area. It doesn't need a ton of work. There's just some texturing and spawning that needs to be done, but for the most part, this area is essentially done, and it is a very, very cool, epic battleground. And it seems like, you know, in each phase, you have, you know, the Ashenvale thing, the Stranglethorn thing, and then maybe down the line, you could have the Azshara Crater battleground. But yeah, Azshara Crater, definitely one of the cooler zones that is unused in the vanilla WoW files. And finally, I'm not going to go too much into this one because it's kind of obvious. There's actually the Escape from Durnhold and Black Morass maps in the vanilla WoW files. Yeah, they've been in the game since vanilla. Obviously, these dungeons did turn up in Burning Crusade, so probably not something they would use, as it was eventually used anyway. But yeah, the Black Morass and Escape from Durnhold in the exact form that you saw them in the Burning Crusade has actually been in the game since the birth of World of Warcraft, which is actually really interesting. I wonder what the plan was there. Obviously, the Caverns of Time also locked off in vanilla WoW, but they did eventually open that up in Burning Crusade as well, so yeah, not too sure. But yeah, I thought I'd just mention the Caverns of Time dungeons here at the end, just for funsies. So if they want to add those, why not? But I don't think it'd be that special as they're, you know, already been used in Burning Crusade. So yeah, there you go. Those are the kind of like 6 or so areas and maps that could be used in Season of Discovery in the future. I really enjoy Season of Discovery. I love what they're doing. It's kind of evolving into a Classic Plus thing, and using some of these unused maps would be such an awesome like unique feature of these realms, and I would love to see them come in, especially the Scarlet Monastery and especially the Stormwind Vault. Those are two of my favorites by far. So yeah, let me know if I missed any vanilla WoW areas that you remember from back in the day. There's tons of like old exploration videos out there on YouTube, so I thought I'd just kind of do a refresher going through some of the zones that are hidden in the game files and still in the game files right now, which is really cool. So thank you very much for watching, guys. Let me know down below what area is your favorite and how you'd like to see it implemented into Season of Discovery in the future. As mentioned, Scarlet Monastery, please, I need it. It's so good. I love it. So yeah, guys, if you like this video, please do leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you want to support me outside of YouTube, I'm also on Patreon and I'm on Twitter at MrGMYT, and I have a partner Discord channel as well. And as mentioned, I am streaming on twitch.tv/MrGM. We're streaming World of Warcraft stuff, Dragonflight PTR, War Within Alpha coming up soon, Season of Discovery, all that good stuff over on twitch.tv/MrGM every single day. And with that, guys, I'll see you next time.